Hi everybody, my name is Stephen Wesley Guiles. I'm here to talk a little bit about the mixing process. I wrote and recorded a song today just for this. It's called I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's not the Beatles song, and it's going to give us the raw elements to work with to practice mixing and to practice some techniques in mixing. Okay, first, this video will cover, I'm going to talk about how to download the tracks. I'm going to provide the basic elements for you. I'm going to talk about basic concepts for recording, and I'm going to focus on the mixing stage of recording and the kind of some basic starting points to get your mix sounding better. Things this video will not cover: how to mix and record in your particular recording program. We call it a DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. So I'm not going to focus on, GarageBand specific or Audacity or Pro Tools or whatever it is that you're using. We will not be talking about how to make or write a hit song. That's up to you. That's some work you're going to have to do on the side. But I will talk about how to record it so that it starts sounding better when you're finished with the process. Okay. All right, well, here are some of the programs that everyone uses, and you can look at the breakdown. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to try and do a specific which station, which audio you're working with. Okay, so my focus is really going to be on what parts of EQ and maybe when and where to apply compression. Because it looks like a lot of you know where to find these things, so that's good. If you don't, then now's the time to pause the video, go to YouTube, and find where these things are in your particular program. All of today's video can be found at, all the information can be found at bit.ly/mix101swg doc. So I have the entire kind of the transcript and links and everything you're going to need at this address. So if you want to open up another tab and go find this spot, that'll probably help in the process of doing this. Okay, so step one in this process, this is going to be using existing tracks. So the tracks that I've provided, you're going to take those tracks and use them to practice the mix. For downloading, you're going to type in the address. Okay, I'm using Google Chrome, doesn't matter what you use. Type it in, I will hit enter, it's going to pop open at Dropbox. Dropbox is going to invite you to join. You do not need to join. I'm going to close this. Okay, and I'm going to click the big download button. Download as zip. And it says create a Dropbox to keep this safe. You don't need to worry about keeping it safe. If you want to, I love Dropbox, it's great. But I'm just going to say no thanks. Just download this file. Okay, and then it's going to pop open a window. Where do you want to save it? I usually say save file. And it certainly helps if you know where your file is saving. I like to save mine on my desktop. Okay, and it might take a few minutes because this is they're pretty large files. So you might want to start now. Maybe have your kids turn off the Netflix. Okay, and that will get you your download. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to do this with your own tracks. But this will give everyone a starting point, so we're all kind of talking about the same thing at the same time. Before we record, I want to say, before we start mixing, I want to give a few basic things. Like a lot of people say, my mix doesn't sound very good, or this doesn't sound as good as that. A few things I've learned. I was at the Taxi Road Rally a couple weeks ago, and every year I learned something new. And there's some things that are repeated that I hear and I know they're good advice. One of the things, good advice, is have a good song, record a good performance, and make a good arrangement of the song. And obviously, if you have those things, it's going to make your mix sound a lot better when you have, you know, good parts. Like if you have 15 guitar parts all playing at the same time, it's probably not going to sound good. So you're going to want to have, if you listen to a lot of popular songs that are on the radio right now, there are generally not too many things competing. There's really one or two really good parts that stand out. The vocal is always prominent, and then all the other instruments are helping make that vocal stand out. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but just kind of before you do anything, if you have a good song, it has clear, distinct parts, and then the instruments you use to record, you know, they all are taking their spot in the mix. You know, like you don't have guitars, keyboards, tambourine, shaker, 14 vocal parts all at once happening, doing different things. It's probably not going to sound very good, okay? And this is kind of out of the scope of this conversation. So keep it simple, stupid, KISS. That's the first thing. Less is more. So I have arranged a simple song that I recorded today called I Want to Hold Your Hand. And the song has an acoustic guitar track, a bass track, a drum track, which is it's a stereo drum track. So when you put it in, you put it into a stereo channel. It has a vocal, 2 background vocals, and a tambourine. And that's it. I'm not. This is not my. It's not my finest work or my worst work. But it's a good starting point. And by the way, using drum loops, there are so many great programs now. And the new version of GarageBand has an amazing drum program. I use a program called Superior Drummer, or Easy Drummer has just come out with a new version that's excellent. Slate Drums. There's all these drum plugins. Or using drum loops, they're going to make your recording already sound a little bit better. For those of you who don't have access to a drummer, I highly suggest using drum loops that sound great. I use them in a lot of my stuff. Using real instruments, I think, is also important and helps create a cool sound. But again, that's not our focus. We're going to focus on mixing and what do we do. So here we go. Another thing you're going to have to do, you're going to have to get the tracks into your program. So this is another thing where I can't go over every program. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to pause the video and figure out how do I bring audio into my my program. Okay, so for those of you that are struggling with that, maybe you could even post in the comments and find someone that is using your particular program. I might even try and get links from people who are using GarageBand, Reaper, etc. Maybe you could post a link to a tutorial for how to do that. But everyone needs to go ahead and get the files into your program. All right, one of my big secrets, and I don't think this is a secret, but one of the things that I've learned is when you're mixing, it's called Subtractive EQ. Okay, so the way I understand it, you have only got so much space. Like you've got the low end, the bass, the boom, 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 the high end stuff, the stuff that's crispy, the like shakers or the plucky part of an acoustic guitar, the attack of a snare. That's kind of more in the middle. But anyway. So you've got this limited amount of space, and if everything is all happening in the same space, it sounds muddy and convoluted. Again, these are not hard and fast rules. These are just suggestions that have worked for me in what I've been doing. The first thing is to subtract out a lot of information. The kick drum takes up a lot of the low end. The bass guitar takes up a lot of the low end. So most of your other tracks, you actually shave out the low end of your EQ. It's called high pass. And what that's doing is you're high passing, you're allowing the high frequencies to pass through. I know there's another term for this. I can't think of it offhand, so I'm sure someone will post that. So what I do is I high pass just about everything except for my kick drum and my bass guitar. And I allow those to carry the low end information, and everything else is taking up other space. But like, for example, all my guitars, my vocals, my tambourine, anything else, all my background vocals, I take off a lot of the low end, and I listen to them, and I kind of play with it. And what I'll do is I'll show you a little bit of how I'm going to do that right now. But basically it means to eliminate or pull out the low information. So I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so here is my recording, and you can hear it. Okay, and I'm gonna just focus in on this background vocal here. So I want to get rid of bass information because I don't need to hear any bass frequencies. So here's my EQ, and it's kind of this straight line. I'm an idiot when it comes to some of this, but what I've learned is I found this button, and what it does is it's going to let me shave off this bass information. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit play again. And if you hear that, it doesn't really sound much different. I'm going to turn it off, and to me, and this is you're hearing this through a pretty crappy mic, it sounds pretty much the same. I'm going to just do a radical change here. Okay, now that you could barely hear. Like, I need more. I'm going to do it until I find a spot where it sounds that resembles my voice. That sounds pretty good, but I've also eliminated lots of extra stuff. I can even also do a low pass and get rid of any extra information that I don't need. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to apply that to my other ones. Now I'm going to listen to some other ones. I'm going to go to my acoustic guitar, for example, and I'm going to listen to my acoustic guitar. Okay, and I'm going to alright, that sounds pretty good. So I like how that sounds, and I kind of settle in for part way over. So I still have the sound of my acoustic guitar. Sounds like an acoustic guitar to me, but it's not taking up all the low end. See, I've got my bass. And I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to leave it pretty much like it is. And my drums, I'm going to leave my drums pretty much the way they are too. And this is a loop, so it was made to sound pretty good. I could eliminate things if I thought it sounded bad, but I'm going to now. Okay, so there's the start of my EQ process. I'm going to go to all of my tracks, and I'm going to low pass everything except for my bass and my drums. Okay, so by doing that, you should hear, by doing that, you should hear a distinct, cleaner sound in your mix. Like if you haven't been doing this, for me, this was like a light bulb. Huh, look at that, light bulb. It was like a light bulb over my head. The moment I started doing this, I experienced much cleaner sound. And there's times where you don't need to do this. It might need to be more muddy or messy, but I'd say just to get a good starting point, doing the subtractive EQ is going to make a huge difference, I hope, in your mixes, especially when you start adding more and more tracks. You have an acoustic guitar, maybe a solo guitar, maybe you've added several percussion items. Everything you add creates more and more traffic, or more and more competition for those different frequencies. Okay, and the thing that makes a lot of mixes sound unprofessional or muddy is too much of that low end information. I mean, too much of any part of it, too much of that piercing high ends, too much of the middle. They can all impact your mix, but this is really to give you a starting point for those of you who are just starting. So I mean, for some of you this is not going to be useful because you're way beyond me. But I think for anyone starting off, this was a big revelation to me in the mixing process. So originally I was going to talk more about compression, but I realize I am not very knowledgeable on compression. So I'm going to suggest some YouTube searches for appropriate uses of compression. I do know that most modern recording uses compression. and I apply it very liberally to most of my a lot of my tracks. I will put some compression, a small amount, and I know that you all have. I think most of you in the survey indicated that you knew where the compression was, and you were sort of not sure maybe what to do with the compression. I would always suggest less is more, less is more. I would suggest getting all of your levels so that you like how they sound together and that the mix sounds pretty good. And then I apply mastering compression on the master channel. I find the master channel, the stereo master channel. You can do this in any of your digital audio workstations. You can bounce your song down to an MP3, or I would bounce it to a WAV or an AIF. I don't use Mac for recording, so whatever that file type is, you bounce it out and then you bring it back into a new, like you open up GarageBand, Pro Tools, Ableton, and you bring that session in, and then you apply a mastering effect to your mixed file, and you apply some more compression to that mixed file, and that will bring your levels up. I know some people want to have like kind of a, you know, the competitive volume, and again I would say liberal amount, but most recording is very squashed. Most modern recording is very squashed and very loud, like they just boost the levels as much as they can. So in conclusion, subtractive EQ, subtractive EQ, subtractive EQ, subtractive EQ. Use subtractive EQ to clean up your mixes and then adjust your levels. I would say make your levels, instead of trying to bring your levels up so everything sounds louder, turn up your headphones or your speakers so that it's louder, and then just get the levels so they sound good. Don't try to bring things up in your recording software. Bring up the volume of your speakers or monitor, and then to make everything louder at the end, you know, bring it in and work with some compression or mastering. Again, I would love to have other people's input, so in the comments I'm going to have links to everything that I've been talking about, to my document, as people provide me links maybe for specific audio workstations or tutorials. Maybe I'll add them into this document. One more time, this is the link. Okay, and so I hope to see you there, and have a great day, and thanks for watching.